Shali is Shalchem, what's mine and what's yours, Shalah, is all about her.
Her life was guided by the differences that she could make.
Her essence was a desire to give and to make things better.
If somebody needed something, she was there.
They said really, if she liked you, she loved you.
Very, very driven, but only l'shem shamayim.
She wanted to build leaders.
She was just a terrific person. She smiled through life.
Okay, my first connection with Aish Torah was reading an ad in the Canadian Jewish News which said, would you like to learn one-on-one with a rabbi?
And somebody called me up and said, there's a guy that wants to learn about prayer. So I called him up, headed out to the insurance office.
Revelatory for me and difficult for Wendy in the beginning because she thought our Judaism was quite comfortable and it was conservative.
And we never saw his wife. So there was an event and he brought his wife. And so he brought her over to me. He goes, this is Wendy. And he was so excited for her to meet me. And Wendy's vibe was totally like an iceberg to me. Like, I don't like you. I don't like anything about you. Go away, stay away from my husband.
I think she said something like, oh, you're the one that's learning about prayer with my husband. And I smiled thinking, yeah, that's great. And she kind of looked at me and said, okay, we'll see.
So what happened with this iceberg? So what happened is she had a baby.
We had Jordana. There were meals from the community.
So we sent meals and the iceberg started to melt.
She found it right from the beginning was this incredible community.
Next step was when she began meeting people who were role models for her.
Harold and Yetta. That was Wendy's mentor, was Yetta.
And she really looked up to them. She said, what are you doing here? So if you are there, there must be something here. And I think the final step was one of the early events. I said to Ephraim after the event, I said, you really could use Wendy. I said, you should speak to her and ask her to be part of organizing.
She was the consummate mother, the consummate cook, the consummate entertainer, the consummate party planner.
She was a woman that everybody loved, a woman that everybody wanted to be friends with. She was everybody's mother.
She was my best friend. She was my confidant. She was an incredible mother to me.
She's a very positive person, very happy and always thinking on the bright side.
She always noticed the little things. The little things always mattered.
She just always seemed to have time for any act of chesed that she could possibly think of.
Wendy was all heart and action.
She threw herself into all these things with love and her full heart. She never did anything half measure.
She held herself to such a high standard.
The chizuk and the koyach that she had was from doing for others. It was like that was her gas, that was her energy and her fuel. I really believe that.
If there was somebody who needed something, whatever it wasn't, she didn't look around for how could they get it. It was her job.
She was the epitome of a modern woman. She was a role model, she really was. She was a role model for me. She was a role model for lots of women who were out there trying to raise a family and work full-time and get involved in the community.
Because we were Balchuvas, we adopted everybody was an aunt and uncle.
Our families became like a family. It wasn't just friends, we basically family, and I became Uncle Peter.
When she adopted you and your family, she adopted your children and anybody else who was close to you.
Wendy played a role in my life as a quasi-mother, sister, and friend.
And those nephews and nieces adored Wendy and looked to her for guidance. They were really surrogate, secondary mother relationships.
Biggest love other than her children was food, and being able to show her love through that was such a big thing for her as well.
This Avraham and Sarah way of life, where she really was like the Akeres Habayis, like she took her home and she opened up the tents on all four sides, and it was like you knew you could go there and people would have such a warm experience at her house.
I think Wendy was known for her hachnasas orchim, welcoming guests on Shabbos.
Food after food after food after food, and it was, everything was amazing.
Whenever I came, she made sure she had lemon pie for me, because that was my favorite.
Sushi pizza, it's pretty good. Like, Shabbat, she would make that? Yeah, it's good.
It's an elaborate 10-course meal, and anyone who's ever been at their table will understand what that means.
Wendy's rule of thumb was, you don't want a guest ever to feel like taking a second helping is going to reduce the amount of food on the table.
When you went to a Shabbos table at my sister's, there was always the tried and true. I mean, there were things there, but there was always, you were going to find something new and unique.
As soon as you walk in to her home, she's there beaming and welcoming you.
That love, brought, newcomers who had never had a Shabbat before.
She literally connected everybody in that shul. Everybody was connected through her table.
Wendy had to deal with the fact that I would constantly bring people home. If there was a person who didn't have a place for Shabbos, it was like I was, Goodwill hunting.
The singing starts, and the melodies were beautiful from Bob's side of the family, and Wendy and him would sing, and then later the kids joined in and sang, and you felt the spirit of Shabbat right then and there. You couldn't mistake it. You couldn't mistake the magic of it.
Wendy was all about, when she was in event mode, she was all about the event. She knew that her team around her was really good.
Wendy, Nancy Rubenstein, and I, we worked together.
Her philosophy of how to do things was to enable people and to give them responsibility, to give them guidance, and then give them independence.
Wendy, she always tried to be cutting edge and what can be done differently.
Everything that she did was always pulled off with grace, beauty, and perfection.
She had a vision for everything, not just for the gala. She just had a vision for everything, and she knew how to execute it in a great way that made everybody happy.
And they were always hugely successful. They not only made lots of money, but they created a community.
We always said that the goal was for it to be a Kiddush Hashem.
There's not too many people our age that would be able to build a shul.
Actually, the property was found by my wife because she identified that the Shell gas station was being shut down, so I was then able to pursue and actually purchase the property. And Wendy was my right-hand person, so to speak, in that whole project.
She had executive, corporate, intimate personality skills that were making him like, I've never seen anything like this. She's a whirlwind, but she gets everything done.
Quite often she was a stellar negotiator, and arbitrator, and moderator.
It's a thankless task because she has to tell everybody, no, it can't be done that way.
Even when what she had to say might not be welcomed, she had a way of saying it that made it possible for people to hear her.
Her blood, sweat, and tears and hopes and joys and love are in every brick, every mortar,
like nothing I'd ever seen on her face when it was finally finished. It was just a pride and a feeling of accomplishment that was unequaled in her life.
That day, when it opened, there were like tears. It just came together, and it was because of her. Wendy always wanted to make the shul a better place.
And she wanted H to be what she wanted her home to be.
But in terms of how she was at a board meeting, she really does care for each person there.
She listened to everybody, she listened to everyone's opinions. She still had a roadmap that she knew she had to get to, but by just part of the thing is if you know you're being listened to, that's half the battle.
She would always acknowledge you, acknowledge your points, and then would say, but perhaps, is it possible?
Shalom Bayit was very, very important to her. And again, she would do it with such grace, though.
If there was ever going to be, like, you know, people speaking in a way they shouldn't speak, or people talking to a rabbi the way she wouldn't have it. And it was as if she was like, I'm the mother of the place. So here's how it's going to go, in the most benevolent, loving way. You know, the village shul in East Toronto, she has early roots in founding and building East Toronto and the village shul. So, and she's stayed involved since the inception, right in the beginning. So a lot of the initiatives and things that exist today, like, all have her DNA in it.
I mean, I think that in terms of how she's affected the Jewish community of Toronto, basically whatever we've done is to a certain extent because of her.
When I think about Wendy, like, my first thought is not her philanthropy or her cooking. My first thought is her dedication to her family. So Wendy loved her kids, and she loved her husband, and she wanted to make sure that their lives were the best. And part of making their lives the best was to create this environment for them in the village shul, in Aish Torah, in Toronto, in, you know, the world, that was peaceful and loving and kind and considerate.
So I think she got pleasure when she was able to help somebody navigate, whether it was an organization to navigate that event or a person to navigate their life. That's what gave her the most pleasure.
When the place is full of strollers, or there's a kids program, or there's something for couples or families, or she sees pictures or videos. Sometimes there were periods where she couldn't come, but she would watch and look at every video and all the pictures, and she would call me up and tell me, she would send me these text messages about, like, just nachas that she got from our community, from the Jewish people being engaged. It really gave her a lot of joy.
Taking care of everybody, looking after everybody was really her hallmark, and people felt that, and they gravitated towards it. I would say that that would be the lasting legacy in terms of recognizing if Wendy could do that, right, with everything that was sitting on her plate, then you can do it too.
She was a leader. She stepped right up to the plate, and I think that one of the things that she leaves behind for all of us is to convey to the next generation that we have to step up.
And those leaders, you know, making the world a better place and doing our part and not stopping. And I think she was one of the biggest role models to show that there's no excuses.
It's a pleasure to be responsible. It's a pleasure to do for others. It's a pleasure to see something through. It's a pleasure to build people and communities. I think that's her legacy.
Be a person who is tikkun olam, who helps people individually become the best selves they can.
All of the love that she poured into her family and her children, and the ability for us to be able to pass that on to our own.
That's what the legacy means to me. The love that will live on, and her good deeds for generations to come.
She just helped the world to be a better place.